Today we are going to continue learning about Python by writing a neat little program I call My Generation. Before we start coding, however, we are going to take some time to explore the 6 living American generations, something that I believe every educated person should know about. Every man, woman, and child alive belongs to an American generation. Each generation represents a unique period in American life. Not surprisingly, the time period in which you come of age has an amazing influence on your life, your attitude, your likes, your dislikes, and even your values. Although everyone is an individual, we do share a lot with our age cohorts. I think that is why Americans have always been obsessed with grouping people into these so-called generations. The 6 living American generations are listed here, starting with the GI generation and ending with Generation Z. The GI generation fought the world wars and lived through the Great Depression. They are often referred to as the greatest generation. The next generation was the mature Silents, who fought the Korean and Vietnam Wars and who benefited from the post-World War II boom. Their children were called the baby boomers. They loved the Beatles, protested the Vietnam War, and fought for civil rights. Next came Generation X, the generation I belong to. We were raised on TV and are often referred to as latchkey kids because it was during our generation that it became common for both parents to work. We also lived through the PC revolution and through the creation of the internet and the World Wide Web. If you were born between 1981 and 2000, then you belong to Generation Y. You are a so-called millennial. Your generation was deeply impacted by 9/11 and the Great Recession. If you were born after 2000, then you are part of Generation Z, and you belong to a disproportionately large and ethnically diverse generation that is still, in many ways, defining itself. Now let's talk about the program that we are going to write. Here is the process flow. The first thing that our program does is asks the user for their year of birth. After that, we do a series of conditional checks to determine which generation the user belongs to. When we find a match, we print it to the screen. Now, I have only shown you a partial process flow because I will be getting you started with the program and you will be responsible for determining the rest of the program's logic and for completing the program itself. We will be writing and testing the first portion of the program, presented here, together, and then you will be responsible for completing the rest yourself. You're going to be working with if statements, elif, and else clauses in order to write your My Generation program in Python. So let's get started. Let's start building our My Generation program by launching idle. Once you launch idle, you should have the ability to create a new file. We're going to be creating a program, so we need a new file. You're going to go to the File menu, and you're going to select New File, or you can use Control-N. When working on these kind of programs, I highly recommend that you lock the program that you're working on to the right of the interactive console. The first thing we're going to do in our program is we are going to declare a variable called birth year, and we're going to assign it the value of whatever the user types in. So the first thing I want to do is I want to put a comment in my program that makes it really clear what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to prompt the user for their year of birth. To do that, I'm going to declare a variable and I'm going to use the input function. So I'm declaring a variable called birth year, and then I'm going to assign it the value of whatever comes back from the following input function. The input function is cool because it allows you to present a message to the user, and then when they type in their data, it comes back and you can use it to assign values to variables. So what's going to happen here is the user is going to see what year were you born. And I make it really clear that they're to provide their 4-digit year of birth. Okay, the next thing that we need to do is we're going to put down a comment for the next section. Now we're to the part of our program where we need to determine, based upon the birth year of our user, what generation they're part of. To do this, we're going to use some conditional logic. We're going to have to use some control flow statements that allow us to put conditional logic in. Specifically, we normally use if, elif, and else statements and clauses to do this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check to see whether someone's birth year is greater than or equal to 2001. That is our most recent generation. The reason why I'm starting with that is that the minute the program finds that one of the if conditions is satisfied, it will not check the rest. So I want to start with the greatest generation that we have. So I'm going to use the if statement, and then I need to cast my birth year to an integer because I'm comparing it to the value 2001. which obviously is an integer. So what I'm asking is, if the user's birth year is greater than or equal to 2001, print to the screen Generation Z, because anyone born 2001 or later is part of Generation Z. What about for the other 5 generations? Well, for the other 5 generations, I need to use the ELIF, which is short for else if clause. So let's see what that looks like. The next generation cuts off at 1981, and that's Generation Y, otherwise known as the millennials. So what I want to do is add a clause, ELIF, and once again, I'm casting my birth year to an integer and then making sure that it's greater than or equal to 1981. If it is, I print Generation Y, aka millennial. Let's go ahead and test our program. The first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to save it. Go to File, Save As, and you can place it wherever you want, but I'm going to put mine in the Coalstock Code Python projects directory, and I'm going to call it my generation.py, and then save it. All right. Remember, to run your programs, you can go to the Run menu and choose Run Module, or you can just press F5. Okay. As you can see, it prompted me, what year were you born? Let's say I was born in 2002. Well, it tells me I'm Generation Z. What if I was born in 2001? Once again, Generation Z. But what if I was born in 2000? If I was born in 2000, it would tell me I'm Generation Y, aka a millennial. So obviously we don't have all of the generations in there yet. So for example, what if I put in my true birth year, 1976? Nothing happens. So obviously we're not done with this program. At this point, that is your task. Your task is to complete this program, adding additional ELIFs to account for the other 4 living American generations. I also want you to add an else clause in the event that none of the 6 conditions are met. You're going to follow the exact same process using what you already know about control flow statements and conditional logic. Remember, you need to save before you run. Let me know if you have any questions whatsoever.